What up YouTube, it's Misery Hates Company. In this video, I want to talk about the best free-to-play hero in Marvel Future Revolution. I did a similar video like this several months ago. I do think it's always important to keep content up to date, and with new heroes coming to the game, I do actually have a few different changes in my opinion on who the overall best free-to-play heroes are for both PvE and PvP. So without further ado, let's jump straight into the video. All right, so who is the best free-to-play hero in the game? Now, previously, I said that Iron Man, my current main, would be a great option. I also tipped the hat at a few different others, but there's two different categories I think we should look at, and both categories have actually changed pretty dramatically, and that's, of course, PvP and PvE. When we talk about PvE, you can't help but talk about some of the top 10, the top contenders of PvE, which is typically Storm. Storm is definitely a go-to when it comes to PvE. I would also tip my hat at MAGIK, my old main. She's also very, very solid in PvE. Iron Man certainly holds his own. And then we also have the addition of Scarlet Witch, who was brought to us as the quote-unquote queen of PvP. However, she does do fantastic in PvE. In fact, I made a video about just how great she is in Spec Ops, where she actually, in my opinion, almost overthrows Storm, who has held that title for a long time as the queen of Spec Ops. So those are all the ones that I think are noticeable mentions, but there have been some changes to the game that I think that are worth talking about. So there is actually 2 or 3 heroes I would recommend as a free to play when it comes to PvE focused content. Now, mind you, PvE focused content is what I would strongly urge our free-to-play friends to do, because it's you can't just get bought out by a whale in PvE. I mean, maybe Alliance raid, you're going to see the whales do a lot better, but again, it's not about competing with the whales, you're working with the whales in that situation, because you're trying to kill the bosses on a weekly basis. So when we talk about the top 3 that I would actually recommend for PvE, I would have to give number 3 to, it's close between MAGIK and who I'm giving number 3 to, and that's actually going to be Iron Man. Iron Man is a very close, is fantastic. Like I said, very close to MAGIK, but if you have built right, you can really do a ton of damage in PvE. So he's going to go ahead and get that 3rd spot. Second best option for PvE for free to play is going to be Storm. That's right. I'm going to give Storm the number 2 spot when it comes to PvE. Now, reason being is that she's still fantastic. However, I actually think she's overdue for some slight adjustments, maybe even a slight buff. There's a certain build that does it fantastic in PvP, but even PvE, it feels like others are catching up to her, and she's just kind of maintaining where she has been, if not kind of falling behind. And which makes sense as the game progresses. People get different builds with different heroes, or just progress their builds on their main heroes in general and get stronger. But it definitely feels like Storm isn't as strong as she used to be in PvE. Still incredibly viable and has some fantastic builds, but maybe not the best. So the number 1 spot for PvE is actually going to go to, and I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me on this, so hear me out when I explain it, is actually going to be Star-Lord. I know, not who you were expecting. Reason being, especially when it comes to Alliance raid or just a single target damage, it is so easy to focus on crit rate and crit damage with him and do fantastic. In fact, you don't even need max crit rate because you have it built into your toolkit that you can hit crit rate cap. And so it's like you get halfway through crit rate and you get additional, boost in your crit rate, and then you just need to focus on crit damage, and which is really all you really need to do a ton of damage is attack, crit rate, crit damage. So that's really all you need is crit rate, crit damage when it comes to an attack, when it comes to PvE, as well as obviously supervillain damage if that's what you're going for in a raid format, which is a very viable option. That's how people are like doubling people who have a higher power than them, is by actually doubling down on supervillain damage. So I actually would go ahead and give the number 1 spot to Star-Lord. As a single target, he can burn down some targets, and especially in Alliance raid. Our Star-Lords on my server and in my Alliance do fantastic, and I just think he has been slept on, and he was buffed a little bit ago, but I really think he has a great spot in both PvP and PvE, and I would actually give him the number 1 spot for PvE. Now, I'm not going to say he's the best overall, because that is going to be another category we cover in this video, is the best overall free-to-play option. But if we were just focusing on PvE, I would actually go ahead and go with Star-Lord in his current state. Now, if we transition to PvP, so that is a very different story for free-to-play. So the third spot is going to go ahead and actually go to Iron Man as well. He's going to have the third spot on both PVE and PVP. He does fantastic. He has very easy to learn toolkit. He's not incredibly gear dependent. I mean, you do need some decent stats to make him do worthwhile. With a certain build, you can actually double down on having 2 different iframes, which is very nice in PvP. So he's going to go ahead and get the third spot for PvP as a free-to-play person in this game. So the number 2 spot, however, is definitely going to go to one and only Black Widow. She is fantastic, arguably the best at dimension duels, at just a dueling aspect, and even in Omega War she does fantastic. She's way more gear dependent than Iron Man, but it will pay dividends. And with how easy it is to get regional gear in the game, I do feel like she bumps up her value for free to play. So I would definitely recommend her as the second best option for free to play when it comes to PvE. Now, of course, PvP. So I would definitely recommend her as the number 2 spot in best PvP hero for a free-to-play person coming to the game. Now, who's going to get the best overall free-to-play PvP best hero? That's got to be Spider-Man. Spider-Man is in a league of his own when it comes to PvP. You basically have the easiest build of all time. It is somewhat gear dependent, but you can get dodge from so many different things in this game, whether it be gear, cores, cards, substats. I mean, it just comes from literally everything and everywhere. And so you can actually get your cap at 90 pretty easily and then still do a ton of damage with his specialization that turns his dodge into attack. So Spider-Man is easily the best free-to-play PvP. Shout out to a good friend of mine, Juicy Fruit, who is a very good example, as if you spend the time and grind daily, do all your dailies, and focus in on one single hero, you can do phenomenal in PvP without having to spend a ton of money in the game. So those are the best for PvP and PvE. Now, there are a couple of heroes that I think are just overall the best options for if you want to balance. So again, the previous options were if you wanted to focus in on PvP or PvE. Now the next category is going to be just overall balance. So I gave Iron Man third place for both PvE and PvP, but he's going to get number 2. And I only have 2 that I'm going to recommend when it comes to overall gameplay. He does fantastic, and he's like a master. He's great at everything, but not a master of any one thing. So he's a great option for the PvP and PvE when it comes to free to play. However, Scarlet Witch, oh my goodness. Scarlet Witch is going to be the overall best free to play hero because, hear me out, while she wasn't in the top 3 of either PvP or PvE as a focus, as a general overall hero, she is so balanced and she can do phenomenal in either one or both. But I don't think when it comes down to focusing on one specific category, she's going to take the cake, but you can absolutely do extremely well on both. So she's actually going to be the most balanced free-to-play option. In fact, if I were to freshly start in the game, she's obviously the newest hero. She has all the hype around her. I'm certainly hyped around her. I love her toolkit. Her specializations are fantastic and very interesting, really. And there's so many different ways you can build her and have it be viable. So Scarlet Witch is going to be the best free-to-play option for both PvE and PvP if you want to have a well-balanced hero and just double down on one single hero in the game, which there is value in doing that. So now if you want to see my first impressions of Scarlet Witch and how I think her overall gear, skills, and everything else is, where I go over literally top down of Scarlet Witch, check out this video right now because I go into the nitty gritty and it's my first impressions. Take a look at this right now.